welcome everybody to Quantum's webinar jointly with the Macular Disease Foundation today on living well with macular disease. And this month, May, is Macula Month. So yeah, we're delighted to have Dilini Manthilaka, Health Promotion Officer from Macular Disease Foundation, joining us. And we've also got Peter Cracknell in our Queensland office who'll be presenting about the assistive technology today. And we have behind the camera, we have Michael Palmer, who's another of our consultants in Queensland. So, and I'm Rebecca Clark. So I'll just do a brief introduction and then we'll get to the main session. So I'd first of all like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land from which this webinar is being presented and pay my respects to elders past and present. And for myself, that I'm on the Darug lands here in New South Wales, and Peter's in Meanjin, and Dilini, I don't know if you're on Gadigal land there in Sydney. Yeah. Just a bit of housekeeping for those who might not have joined our webinars before. Your microphone will be muted during the webinar, but we've got questions at the end and also after Dilini's talk. And if you do have any questions, please either use the Q&A question and answer area, which you can tab to, or click on the little icon there, or use the chat area, and the shortcut for that is Alt and H or Command K if you're on a Mac, and put things in there. And again, if you're having any technical difficulties, please use that as well, and I'll keep an eye on it. We are recording the webinar and we'll send that through as a link afterwards for anyone that's registered, and live caption should also be enabled, so if you need those. So just an introduction, overview of today's session. So after this introduction, Dilini will be presenting on macular disease, bit of an overview there, and living well with the disease and how the foundation can help you. We'll then have a question session for Dilini, and then Peter Cracknell will be showing you some assistive technology that may help with different daily tasks for you that's available if you've got macular disease and that's affecting your vision. We'll also then have another question session and then have our contact information. So just briefly, a little bit about Quantum. So we're a assistive technology company. We've been around for over 30 years or 35 years. We're a national company. We've got offices or site support centres in Brisbane, Melbourne, in Thornlie in Sydney, and also in Kirrawee that you can visit by appointment. And we also have other representatives around the country and can cover throughout Australia. And we also have some dealings with New Zealand as well. So we can work with you if you're got low vision yourself, or if you're having any reading difficulties. We're an NDIS and also Department of Veterans Affairs registered provider, and we can also help you with other funding, such as through My Aged Care packages and also job access for anyone in the workforce, as well as those that are privately funded. So you can contact us directly and we can work with you to find, we've got a whole range of different suppliers and different equipment that Peter will go through some of that today. And yeah, hopefully can help you if you've needing some sort of aids to read with for if you've got low vision. So I will now hand over to Dilini, who is a Health Promotion Officer at Macular Disease Foundation, and she's going to talk to you about macular disease. So.
Perfect. Thanks so much for that, Rebecca. All right. Hi, everyone. I hope you can all hear me okay. As Rebecca mentioned, my name is Dilini and I'm from the Macular Disease Foundation Australia. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are meeting today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. So today we're going to be taking a look at age-related macular degeneration and AMD in general, we're going to take a look at the impact that vision loss or vision changes, or even just a diagnosis can have in our lives. I'll take everyone through a little bit of a case study and how that particular patient is now living very, very well with their macular disease. And if you would like to contact us, or if you'd like to refer to us, I'll be going through that as well. So age-related macular degeneration, I will be calling it AMD for short. It is one of the most common macular diseases in Australia. So when we talk about macular diseases, that can range from diabetic eye disease to retinitis pigmentosa to MACTEL. So there's a lot of different conditions that come under the umbrella of macular disease. And age-related macular degeneration, or AMD, is the most common macular disease. And we know it's the most common because 1 in 7 over the age of 50 in Australia have some form of AMD. And this has been shown to increase with age. And it's actually the leading cause of blindness in Australia. So you might be able to see in this pie chart, if we sort of compare it to some of the other common conditions. So we have glaucoma in the white, that accounts for about 18% of blindness cases. Cataracts in the grey, they account for about 11%. But AMD specifically accounts for about 51%. And if we include all macular diseases in that, that percentage actually increases even further. So it does impact a large portion of the population. Now, before I get into age-related macular degeneration and macular diseases in general, I thought it might be a good idea just to go over the eye to provide a little bit of context about where the macula is and what exactly it does. So on the right of your screen, you might be able to see a cross-section of a cartoon eye. So just a cartoon eye we've cut right through the middle. And one of the first structures that we have is the pupil. So the pupil controls how much light is going into our eyes. So if you're outside on a very bright day, our pupils will be quite small. But if you're inside in quite a dark room, then our pupils will be really, really big. And so it controls that amount of light coming in. And once the light has entered the eyes, it hits a structure called the lens. Now, the lens of the eye, it's very similar to the lens of the camera. It helps focus the light that's coming into our eyes. And once that light is focused, it hits a layer at the back of the eye called the retina. Now, you might be able to see a red layer that sort of lines all the way around the eye in that image there. That entire red layer is the retina. And what the retina does is it absorbs the light that's coming into the eyes and changes that into electrical signals or electrical messages. And then those electrical signals, they travel to the brain through a structure called the optic nerve. And then that's how we see images in our everyday life. Now, there is another structure that I've circled here, and this is very hard to see, so I do apologize. But some of you might be able to see a tiny little dip in that green circle there. And that little dip is the macula. Now, I know it looks very small in the image, but that's because it's very small in real life as well. It's only about 4 to 5 millimeters in width, so a very, very tiny structure. But it's responsible for about 90% of our visual processing. So that means things like reading, writing, driving, even recognizing faces. That's all done by the macula of our eye. So quite an important part of the eye. Now, I do have another image on the left there. So some of you may have seen an image like this at the optometrist or maybe the ophthalmologist. This image is called a fundus photo, and it's essentially a picture of the back of the eye. So if I was to go into your eye right now through your pupil and take a picture, this is what it might look like. And I've circled the macular region there in the green circle. Usually we can identify the macula because the center of it is a little bit darker than the surrounding area. So in terms of, where the macula is, what it does, this is essentially it. And when we talk about conditions like age-related macular degeneration, it impacts the macula of our eye. And with AMD specifically, there are 3 different stages to the condition. There's an early stage, an intermediate stage, and a late stage. And then the late stage is divided into 2 different types. There's a dry type and a wet type. So you may have heard the term, dry macula or wet macula before. Now, I did want to go through these different stages, and as we go through the stages, what I wanted to take a look at was how the macula changes. And what we're going to do is we're going to zoom into the macula and we're going to look at the different layers that are there. So the image on your left, that's a zoomed in section of the macula. Right on the left, we have some blood vessels in red. And on the right side, we have some cells of the retina. And I'm just going to turn this image on its side as we look at the different changes. So if we talk about the early and intermediate stages of AMD, what happens is there is a buildup of waste product at the back of the eye. And that waste product is called drusen. So again, at the bottom, we have those blood vessels, and then at the top, we have the cells of the retina. But some of you might be able to see a yellow section in between those layers. And that yellow section is that drusen or buildup of waste product. And if we look at a patient with this, so on the left, we have a very, very healthy macula. And then on the right, we have a patient with early AMD. And again, this is very hard to see, so I do apologize. But some of you might be able to see very, very small yellow dots where that green arrow is. And that's where that buildup of drusen or waste product has occurred. And it appears as little yellow dots for us. And this is a patient with early AMD, but if we look at somebody with intermediate AMD, so that's that second stage, this is what it might look like. So you might be able to see that drusen or waste product, it's gotten a lot bigger in size. There's a lot more of them and they've spread out as well. And that's because we're in that sort of second stage of the condition. Now, for the most part, most people in the early and intermediate stages do not notice a change in their vision. So much so that 1 in 4 people with AMD don't actually know they have the condition because it doesn't change our vision. Only an optometrist or an ophthalmologist can pick that up, which is why regular eye exams are very, very important. So that's the early and intermediate stage. Now let's look at the late stage. So remember, the late stage had a dry type and a wet type. So if we look at the dry type first, what happens is over a number of years, there is a continuous buildup of that waste product. And eventually, if there's too much waste product buildup, some of the cells at the back of the eye can be lost. So some of you might be able to see there's 2 sort of lighter patches where that green arrow is. And that's where those cells have been lost. And the reason it's a little bit lighter is because we're actually starting to see the whites of the eyes from the back. It's starting to come through. You may have also heard the term atrophy or geographic atrophy when describing dry. So atrophy just means a death of cells, which is exactly what happens here. So you can imagine that someone with this at the back of their eye probably has quite significant vision loss at this point. Now, if we look at the wet type is a little bit different again. What happens here is that a few blood vessels grow through the back layer of the eye. And those blood vessels, because they're new, they tend to be quite weak and they can leak blood and fluid into the back of the eye. And that's why it's called wet, because there's literally fluid sitting at the back of the eye. So in this image, you might be able to see some of those blood vessels have grown through that layer. And if we look at a patient with this is what it might look like. So again, on the left, we do have that healthy macula, and on the right, you might be able to see quite a large brown, sort of dark red patch there. That's the leakage of blood and fluid that has occurred. So again, someone with this at the back of their eye probably has quite significant vision loss. And when we are talking about vision loss or changes to vision, the macula is responsible for our central vision. So all the vision in the middle, it doesn't actually impact our peripheral or outside vision, which is why I was saying before, the macula is responsible for things like reading, writing, driving, and recognizing faces. All right, so that's essentially what age-related macular degeneration is, and those are the vision changes that are associated with it. For the most part, a lot of macular conditions, they all revolve around central vision changes, regardless of the exact diagnosis. So now that we've gone through that, I thought it might be a great idea to go over a little bit of a case study. I know that those slides of the stages can be a little bit confronting. However, just a diagnosis itself, regardless of the stage, regardless of the specific type of macular disease, it can be quite confronting in itself. So I wanted to go through this case study because we get to take a look at what happens, what can potentially happen to someone in their entire life when they do receive a diagnosis, but at the same time, how can you live well with a diagnosis and how that's very possible with the right amount of support. So this is a story about Doug. He contacted us 14 years ago, and at that point he was 64 years old. He was a part-time teacher, and he loved playing lawn bowls, and he loved interacting and looking after his grandkids, and he was just a very social person overall. When Doug was diagnosed, he was diagnosed with wet macular degeneration in his right eye. And at that point in time, he actually didn't have any changes to his vision. Despite this, Doug told us that when he was diagnosed, it felt as though his entire life changed. And it wasn't just about vision changes, because we do know that macular diseases, it can result in a change in vision. And that wasn't the only thing that Doug was concerned about. He was also concerned about the social implications of a diagnosis. So as I said, he loved playing lawn bowls, but he was really worried that he wouldn't be able to play anymore with vision changes, or he wouldn't be able to, go on his social outings. We also saw that there was quite a big psychological and emotional impact from the diagnosis, because Doug was very, very concerned that if his vision was to deteriorate, he wouldn't be able to interact with or even recognize his grandkids. So he was very concerned about that. There was also a functional implication as well. So some of you might know with a diagnosis of wet macular degeneration, you need to have eye injections regularly. Sometimes that could be every month. And Doug actually had a daughter and a grandson living interstate. And he realized that he might not be able to visit them due to the frequency of his eye injections. And he always had to be, at home to make sure he had those injections. So he was very worried about that as well. And finally, the economic impact. So some of you might know that eye injections are extremely expensive. They can average about $400 to $600 per appointment, and that can be every month. And Doug let us know that on a long-term basis, that was probably not going to be sustainable for him. So there was a lot of different things that were impacting his quality of life. In saying that, though, Doug thankfully received a lot of support from a lot of different areas. And I just wanted to show you how his quality of life increased dramatically and how now he's living very, very well with his macular disease diagnosis. So like I said, we supported Doug throughout the past 14 years. He's now 78 years of age. He's still receiving injections quite regularly, but he has noticed a slight decrease in vision. Despite that, he said that his quality of life is probably one of the highest it's been throughout his life. So these are the different things that we sort of supported him through. So his first concern was about vision changes. And because Doug didn't have a diagnosis in his other eye, there was actually quite a few different things that he could do to reduce his risk of being diagnosed in the other eye. So these were dietary changes, taking supplements, and just overall things to improve his eye health that we helped him with. So we helped him with things like sharing recipes or buying particular food that would help, or buying particular supplements that could slow down that progression. In terms of the social impact, so you might remember that he was quite worried about discontinuing lawn bowls. However, there are organizations out there that actually do events like low vision lawn bowls, or low vision walking groups, or low vision reading groups. And we connected him with these groups. And since Doug has restarted going to all the social events, he said that his confidence is just as high as it was before his diagnosis. From a psychological and emotional perspective, Doug definitely was feeling a little bit down when he did receive his diagnosis, just because of the uncertainty around his future as well. So we encouraged him to join our peer support group. So we connected him with a peer support group in his area, and every month he met up face-to-face with other people who had a macular disease diagnosis, such as himself, and he was able to share what he was feeling, and everyone else in the group was able to share, how they were feeling and how they got through that initial diagnosis as well, and how they're living well with their macular disease. Doug also took use of a program called MacMates, which is where he was able to have a chat with someone over the phone who also had a macular disease, and was able to give their lived experience of what they've been going through as well. So Doug has said that having these experiences made him feel as though he wasn't alone, and he wasn't the only one with a macular disease diagnosis. So that definitely helped him out as well. From a functional impact, again, I did say that he was worried he wouldn't be able to visit his daughter that was interstate. So in that particular situation, we actually found an ophthalmologist for him interstate, who was happy to provide him injections just when he was visiting. So this meant that despite his regular injection schedule, Doug was able to visit his daughter and grandson regularly, which was really nice to see. And finally, the economic impact. So as I said before, injections can be extremely expensive, and we do have an advocacy team at our organisation, and their entire role is to look after the macular disease community and look after their best interests. And we actually had a very, very big win this year, which helped Doug specifically and everybody receiving eye injections. So some of you might know that Medicare gives you back about $270 as a rebate when you receive injections. And about 3 years ago, Medicare released a report saying that they wanted to reduce that rebate down to $80, which would have made eye injections extremely unaffordable for most people. So for the past 3 years, our advocacy department has been fighting that, going down to Canberra all the time, trying to make sure that that cut doesn't go through. And earlier this year, we were very successful, and both major political parties said the cut wouldn't go through. So that is a very, very big win for people like Doug and who are receiving injections, which just means that it's a little bit more affordable, which is good. So these are just some of the ways that organizations like the Macular Disease Foundation, other support organizations can help people live well with a macular disease diagnosis. And you might have seen that with Doug, it was quite personalized support. So it was very much what he needed. But for anyone that contacts us or for anyone that is referred to us, they do receive that personalized support. So it's very much catered towards you. And you can receive that support in whichever way you prefer. So if you prefer to say just receive resources, you can definitely do that. You can order information packs, or you can sign up for a free newsletter if you just want to keep up to date with what's going on in the macular world, whether it be about government services, the newest technology, or maybe even the newest drugs or research that's available. You can do that. Or if you prefer to say learn about the newest things that are occurring in the macular disease community, you can attend education sessions, so either face-to-face or a webinar like we're doing today. And we tend to collaborate with a lot of ophthalmologists, optometrists, researchers and counsellors to give a wide range of topics that you can benefit from. And you're also given the opportunity to ask questions from these professionals as well. If you do want that sort of more personalized support, then you can contact us. So that could be either, giving us a call or sending us an email, and we can sort of start the process of that personalized support. Or if you don't want to have a chat with anyone at all, which is completely fine, and you prefer to sort of do, get your resources yourself, then we have this free application, a free mobile application called My Interact that you can just download onto your smart device. And essentially, it's a single place for patients to receive accessible, consolidated, and relevant material. And that's personalized as well. So all you have to do is pop in your diagnosis. So whichever macular disease you've been diagnosed with, and if it's AMD, what stage you have, and you'll receive that personalized support on the app itself. And I'd like to stress here, everything I've mentioned, absolutely everything I've mentioned is completely free. There's no charge for it whatsoever. This is a little bit of feedback that some people have provided us, and I think it really highlights, how they're living well with their macular disease, despite the fact that it can be quite a scary diagnosis. They're living very, very well with the condition. Now, if you did want support, you can refer yourself, or if you're a healthcare professional watching today, you can refer your patients to, obviously, with their permission. And you can refer anybody. So you don't even need to have a diagnosis. Maybe you're at risk of a diagnosis, or maybe you have a family member and you need support to support them. So anybody can be referred at any point in their macular disease journey, and they can be referred in a few different ways. So if you want to give us a call, you can do that on the number that you see on your screen, which is 1-800-111-709. Or if you prefer to email, you can do that as well. Or you can pop on our website, and there's a lot of resources available there too. If you're an optometrist or an ophthalmologist or a GP watching today, you can use Ocular as your referral mechanism. That comes directly to us as well. All right, so that brings us to the end of my presentation. I hope you found that informative. And the last message I just wanted to leave everyone with is that there is a lot of support out there for you, not just with the Macular Disease Foundation Australia, which is where I'm from, but there's a lot of different organisations. So please don't be afraid to reach out for that support, because it is very, very possible to live well with a macular disease diagnosis. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dilini. That was great. So, yeah, that's a lot of information there. If anyone does have, we'll have a quick question and answer session now. So if anyone does have questions for Dilini, please let me know. Dilini, we did have one just asking what the name of the app was again that you mentioned. So was it My Interact?
Yes, that's exactly right. So it's called My Interact, and you can whichever smart device you have, you can either go into the Google Play Store or the App Store, and that's available for you there.
Oh, that's great. I think we had some questions that were people put in the registration form. One was around what's the latest research on macular disease? I realise that might be a long answer.
There's actually a lot of research going on all the time. The latest, there's two maybe I'll have a chat about. So there was a drug released called Vabysmo earlier this year in Australia. So it was approved by the Therapeutics Goods Administration last year. However, even if a drug is approved, it can be very, very expensive to use unless it's put on the pharmaceutical benefits scheme. So this new drug Vabysmo was actually put on the PBS, or the pharmaceutical benefits scheme, on the 1st of January this year. And it's the research shows that it may be better than the current drugs being used, Eylea and Lucentis. So if you are receiving eye injections for your wet macular degeneration or even diabetic eye disease, you can have a chat with your ophthalmologist about the new drug. Again, that drug is called Vabysmo, and see whether it's appropriate for you. And then the other one is there is a new drug called pegcetacoplan, a bit of a long name. Hopefully they shorten it before it's released. And this is the first drug of its kind because it's the first drug to address dry macular degeneration.
Oh, okay.
We've never, ever had a treatment for the dry type. So this is extremely exciting. They've actually received approval from the FDA in the US, which is a great first step. They've applied in Europe as well for their regulatory board, and they've applied for the TGA here in Australia. So we've got all our fingers and toes crossed that will go through, but that's probably sort of the newest thing that's coming up. If you are interested in sort of research with macular disease, like I said, we have a free newsletter. So that comes out 3 times a year, and we include all the latest research in that. If you want, we just do a section just on a research update, which is about 2-3 pages just on research. If someone would like that, just give us a call. We send them out for free, and it just includes the latest research.
Great. Someone's put, what were the 2 drugs that are currently being used?
So the 2 major drugs that are used in Australia it's called intravitreal injections. So one is called Eylea, and then the other one is called Lucentis. So those are the 2 major ones. We previously, last year, we did have Avastin being used as well. That was more in a public hospital setting for the most part. Unfortunately, that cannot be bought in Australia, but some ophthalmologists may still be using it if they have leftover stock, or if they have patients that react particularly well to that drug, they might even buy it overseas and bring it over. But for the most part, Eylea and Lucentis, and I know a lot of ophthalmologists are starting their patients on Vabysmo now since it was introduced in January.
Okay, great. There was another one that we'd had on an email about they'd heard that seed oils were not good for macular disease.
I might talk specifically about age-related macular degeneration here, just because all the macular diseases can be a little bit different, but the research was done on it. There's a lot of conflicting research on margarines and oils and butters overall. So there's some research that says, it's not really great for age-related macular degeneration. Then there's other research that says it is good. So it is a little bit conflicting. So the Macular Disease Foundation Australia's a stance on it is everything in moderation. Obviously, you want to lower your intake of saturated fats because we know that that's not good for overall health, which is, not good for eye health. So just everything in moderation. If you are, say, cooking with butters and oils, it might be a good idea to use olive oil instead, because we know olive oil has a protective factor. But just for sort of very specific, say, seed oils or butters, margarines, it's just a bit shaky at the moment, the research. So just everything in moderation.
Thanks for that. That's great. I don't think there are any other questions at the moment. So I might now hand over to Peter, and Peter is going to present on some of the low vision aids and technologies that we have for people who might be struggling with their reading or other activities. So thanks, Peter.
Thank you very much, Beck, and thank you very much, Dilini. I really appreciated seeing your presentation. I've seen many presentations over the years, and it's good to see that there are some new developments, especially with the dry form of macular disease, which we see so many people with dry macular disease, and so it's great to see there's some progress in that area. We tend to see people at the mid to late stages, because of course that's when the impact of the disease kicks in. As you mentioned, Dilini, some of our customers did not know that they had an eye disease, let alone macular disease, until they closed one of their eyes. Perhaps they woke up and one of their eyes was obscured, or maybe they were lining up to take a shot at pool or something like that. And of course they closed their good eye and had to use the eye affected by the macular disease, and that's when they first realized that they had an issue. So the sorts of things that people struggle with that you mentioned, we can't help people with driving or that sort of thing. We tend to help people more with their reading, writing tasks, some of the things that they struggle with every day in the home and out of the home. So that might also involve computers or tablets. People are struggling to use those. But it's also those everyday tasks like, reading the dials on the microwave, checking the TV guide, writing a shopping list, those sorts of everyday things that we take for granted with good sight, but become really, really difficult when you get affected by macular disease. So the effect on the central vision means that you just can't make out the letters so clearly, the letters that you're handwriting or the letters that you're reading in a document. So we've got various techniques to help people with that. Some of them are very, very low tech, and some of them are quite sophisticated. And the purpose of my talk today is just to introduce you to some of the possibilities here. I'm talking to you from our site support centre at Spring Hill in Brisbane. And so we have everything laid out here for people to come and see and try. We also spend a lot of time in the field, out on the road, meeting people in their homes and their workplaces and so on, trying equipment with them. So I'm just going to start with just a sort of things that people have trouble with. So there's reading and writing, of course, managing packaging on foodstuffs. There's managing remote controls as well for the television and other devices. Dials and displays, out shopping, reading labels and pricing and so on, and also in restaurants, reading menus. There's also people have problems doing their hobbies, their crochet and maybe some of their scrapping and pleasurable activities like jigsaws and so on. These will become increasingly difficult. Reading medication is an important thing, of course. The writing is often very small on scripts and on pill bottles. And then, of course, we have the issues about watching television, using the computer and tablets and those sorts of things. So I'm going to show you some of the things we do, particularly for reading, and that divides into two basic categories: making things clearer, bigger and sharper, and also using the wonders of modern technology to have things read back to you, and we call that text-to-speech. So when we talk about magnifying things, and I'm going to demonstrate it on one of our bigger machines. It's a 24-inch screen called the Clearview, because if I demonstrate it on that, you can see some of the important aspects of magnification. This is a very large 24-inch Clearview electronic magnifier. We call it a desktop magnifier because it sits on a desk. We have a large range of these devices, some of them much, much smaller, and I'll show you some of them. But when we're reading a magazine or small newsprint, the size of the print and sometimes the quality of the print is really difficult for people with macular disease. They often complain that things are fading, that they can't make out the words because of the damage of their central vision. So the thing that we can do is we can place it under an electronic magnifier, and by just twisting a dial, we can get very large magnifications of the print, and of course photographs as well. Whatever's on the document or the magazine can be magnified. And you'll see what I'm doing here is I'm actually simply sliding a tray so that we can move the document very stable way. And especially at larger magnifications, and I'm going to twist the dial now to make that bigger, it's important to have a very stable image as we move left and right and back and forth. Especially important for people if they have an age-related condition who might have a tremor or just very poor gross motor skills. So this tray actually dampens down any of those motions, so it's a very smooth reading. What we're seeing here is just pure magnification. We're just making everything bigger, and that frequently is all that people need. We can also increase the contrast. So by pressing a button, I can make this very bold. Or by pressing the same button, I can reverse it so the background is dark and the writing is bright and in high contrast. We see a lot of people with macular disease who are sensitive to glare and they prefer a darker background. What they really do need, though, is good illumination and good contrast. So these electronic devices can actually provide that. And we have people with very late macular disease who can still continue to read with this kind of a device. Of course, this is a large screen, very, very powerful. We have smaller screens, so we also have here a 13-inch screen. And this is called the Clover Book. It's a sort of a foldable screen, so it can actually fold up and be transported from room to room. And so this allows you to magnify in the way that we had before. So we can either pinch zoom the magnification like you would on an iPad, or we can use a dial for those people that prefer to use a dial. And we can do everything that we did on the larger machine. We can switch to different contrast, different size. We can even push the image around like this. So this is what we call a transportable electronic magnifier. This can be moved, say, from the dining room to the kitchen, put on the kitchen bench, and then you can read a recipe. You can also write under these machines. So you can place paperwork under here, and then you can get your pen in. Perhaps you were doing a crossword or something like this. You can actually get your pen in under the screen, and then you could actually be completing a crossword or a shopping list or something like that. So either the big machine or the smaller machine can do that. Some people also will put objects like bottles of pills or packaging under these devices. So you can see that can help you manage your everyday affairs. It is possible to do a little bit of handiwork under these sorts of devices. So here, for example, I can actually get a little bit of crochet stuff under here happening. Of course, a lot of people do tasks automatically. They don't actually look at what they're doing, but this is a great way of just checking your work, whether you dropped a stitch or something like that. So those are two reasonably large screen devices. We also have much smaller devices as well. So the smallest one that we do is just this little 3.5-inch device called the Clover 3. And though, of course, as you can see, the screen is much smaller than even on the Clover here, you're not going to be reading a newspaper with it or a book, but it's very good just for those occasional tasks where you just want to quickly check something in a very portable way. So this is just reading the TV guide, but it could be in a shop. Perhaps you were just looking at a label or something like that. An extremely transportable, pocket-sized device. One of the things that this device can also do is you can actually press a button to freeze the image. And the idea there is that you might be reaching for a shelf with a label or something, and you can actually just snap it with that, and then you can bring it closer to your face, maybe magnify it a bit, and then read the price or whatever you're trying to do. So we have a large range going from the very smallest one through the mid-range up to the large desktops. It is also possible to connect some of these to a television set. So just using an HDMI cable, and I'll just go and get one that we can try this with. Now, the reason why this is quite useful is that sometimes people have got very good televisions and they can use them as the large screen, which will give them a benefit when they're reading, say, the TV guide or something like that. So here I'm just going to plug the HDMI cable into our 6-inch electronic magnifier. And the screen on the magnifier disappears, but on the television now, we have got humongous magnification like this. So you can imagine how convenient that would be to be able to read the TV guide in your armchair just by cabling it via HDMI. So this is a range of visual devices. So they're very, very effective. Some people may not need an electronic device like one of these. They might instead just need an optical magnifier. So this is what we call a stand magnifier. It's got a light in it, and you just place it on the reading material. So it's like a torch with a magnifier. Very good for people with very early macular disease who only need a little bit of magnification. And another very popular option is a handheld magnifier. So we're all familiar with magnifying glasses, but these ones were designed for people with macular disease and other vision conditions. They have very strong illumination in a little torch thing here, which is giving task lighting, task illumination, which means that the light is just concentrated on the reading material. Very, very handy, of course. It's not electronic, it is battery powered. This particular model is a rechargeable model. The idea is that you place it in a charging cradle like this and just forget about it, and it recharges it wirelessly. And then you just lift it off and switch the light on as required. One of the things I just want to mention about magnifying glasses, because people often have a little confusion about it, is they often ask, can we just have like a really big lens so that I can see the whole of the Sydney Morning Herald and read the whole paper that way? Unfortunately, we can't do that. The bigger the lens, the weaker the magnification power. So of the two magnifiers that I'm showing you here, the large lens one is actually a weak one compared to the small lens one here. So you might think, well, why don't we just all use the small lens ones? The problem is, as you increase the power of the lens, the focal length decreases. And to use this successfully, I actually have to, you won't be able to see this because I have to put it in my eye and I have to bring the paperwork right on my nose before I can see anything at all. And then, of course, I'm only seeing half a word in that view. So this is okay for spot reading, but not for any substantial reading at all. So these are some things that people use every day for reading just regular correspondence, managing their affairs, packaging, and so on. Also for reading books as well. We have a lot of people who continue to read books this way. I should mention that some people use Kindles, and Kindles are those little portable tablets that you can download books onto, and they can magnify the size of the font. So some people will use those to continue reading, and other people will continue to use good old paper books. And some people, I should mention, will use talking books. And this little device I have in my hand here is a talking book player. It's called the Envoy Connect. It's from Vision Australia, and it connects to the Vision Australia Talking Book Library and their periodical library too. And the idea is that you simply download a number of books onto this, and then the controls are all tactile, so you can feel the controls.
The age, Tuesday, 16th of May, 2023. About this publication, this daisy title has been converted from another format and may vary from the original.
And I can pause and play,
excerpts of emails of,
and I can move through to the next book or the next periodical this way. So this means that people can still be reading books, novels, and newspapers and so on, using text-to-speech or recorded speech. And that's something that I'm going to come to now. So we sometimes have people who they find that even with the biggest magnifications, they get a lot of visual fatigue. Sometimes they might get nausea, or sometimes they just literally, they can only read letter by letter. So how can we help those people? We can use some of our text-to-speech technology to read out loud documents for them. So I'm going to go back to the big machine I showed you first, because this particular machine is called the Clearview Speech. And it is possible with this device to not just magnify, but also
position the text inside the window and tap the screen.
To position the text inside the yellow area here and tap the screen. And now it's processing every column, and it's going to be reading them in order 1, 2, 3 with a synthetic voice. Now the synthetic voice is a very good one, and it sounds like a human being. I'm just going to play that.
Was the youngest of 3 siblings after her brother Hugh, who died in 2019, and sister.
And I'm pausing it because I haven't magnified it deliberately so that you could hear the speech, but we can magnify it.
Zoom in, zoom in, zoom in. Rona, who died of brain cancer in 2013 and was once married to Olivia's Greece County star Jeff Conaway. Olivia was just 6 years old when her family moved across.
So there we have a combination of it speaking and magnifying. This very, very powerful combination. And it means that people can also move around the document and just tap where they want to read.
Who at the time was 29, booked.
We can change the voice. We can even change to a foreign language voice. So we might have this being read in Italian or in Spanish. Of course, it won't translate from English to Italian. We'd have to have an Italian document under here, but it will read it back in that language. So this is one that's using a combination. We also have a couple of models that use just audio. So this one is called the Clear Reader. You place your document just in front, and then you press a button, and it will then read out loud that page. This is quite popular with people that want a very stable and solid and tactile solution. There's a scan button at the top, which is also a volume control.
Or your Independence UT Vision Street Door. PenFriend 3 audio label user voice to record labels for a range of items around your home, school or work. Easy to use.
And I just controlled it by pressing the pause button here. We've also got a fast forward and a rewind. Very simple. We have people who are totally blind who use this, and they use it just to manage all of their everyday reading. That's the Clear Reader. Now we have a compressed version of it. I like to refer to it as a compressed version called the Orcam Read. It's from a different manufacturer, from the Orcam company. And this contains all of the computer power of the other machine, plus some other things, with a camera at the front, some simple buttons, and a speaker at the back. So this one here, you hold in your hand, and you... what you're hearing there was I've connected it by Bluetooth to a speaker, so it'll be a bit more audible. But the idea is I aim and press a button, and you may see a red frame, and then release the button.
And frame 3 audio labor. Script 1 line which was cut off around your home, school or work. Easy to use. Store up to 250 hours of recordings. Here's $6,290. Talking microwave text.
And so it's possible to simply go to another page and do the same thing here again.
A0. Amplified big button phone. Care 95 this big button. Amplified speakerphone is ideal.
This can be used in a very simple way, just to snap something either close or at a distance. So it could be a shop front sign, it could be a sign in the street, or it could be something you're holding in your hand like a restaurant menu. But it does have some smarts as well. It is possible to use your voice to control it, and you can go into a mode called smart reading mode where you ask it to read just the headlines. Thank you. Or just the amounts of money, or the dates, or even to read from a particular column or a particular article in a newspaper. And that's all possible in this microcomputer called the Allcam Read. Very, very handy. So we have a combination of visual magnification and contrast, or text to speech. Some of these things can also be applied on computers as well. So a lot of people will be struggling with their iPads and their computers. I'm just getting a bit conscious of time. So with the iPad, we can magnify what's on an iPad. At the moment, this is very small, but just by doing a triple tap, we can actually make it bigger. So there's lots of things like that that people can do to continue to use the tablets that they already own. That also applies to an iPhone as well. And on a computer, we can do similar things. So the writing's small normally, but by pressing a combination of keys, we can make things bigger on the computer as well. I haven't got time to go into all of the ins and outs of that, but we can use ZoomText software to magnify and speak what's on the computer screen so people can continue to do email and Facebook and that sort of thing. And finally, I'd like to mention some of the techniques we have for watching television. So one of them would be to use a pair of 2 times power magnifying spectacles. So this magnifies things 2 times. Unfortunately, you can't wear your prescription spectacles underneath it, but it does mean that you don't have to be so close to the television. You can sit in your normal armchair and you could be watching the television with 2 times magnification. If that isn't strong enough, then you could perhaps use something like the Clover Book Pro here and use the distance camera on the Clover Book to zoom in on the television. I've got it quite large there. So that's just seeing what's on the television there. On a screen that's closer to you, that might be on a small trolley, looking at a television at a distance like that. And the final way is to actually take a stream from your television into something called the Vision Buddy TV. Now, this is a virtual reality headset that's been modified for people with low vision. The idea is it takes Netflix and all those sort of channels directly into the headset. So instead of looking across the room at the TV, you have it presented right in front of your face. And though you won't be able to see the effect here, it's like being in one of those IMAX cinemas with a very large screen. And the beauty of that is that you can see in your peripheral vision, you can see the action. So you might have 2 people speaking in a film. You can still see one actor on the side of your vision whilst the focus is on the other actor. And this is one of the problems if you're just magnifying with, say, a mini scope or something like that, is you can only focus on one person. But with the Vision Buddy TV, you can see the larger view. And it's all straight into your headset like this. And finally, just going to mention that it is also possible for people that struggle with mobile phones, especially iPhones. If they really struggle with iPhones and all the complexity of that, it's possible to get a simpler smartphone.
2 new notifications, 12:00.
So this is called the Blind Shell Classic 2, and it was a mobile phone designed for blind and vision impaired people. Large print on the screen.
Call 1 of 7.
And very nice sharp sound describing everything that you're doing. So that tells you that that's how you can call somebody.
Messages.
Go
2
to your messages.
Contacts. 3 of 7.
Go to your contacts.
2 new notifications.
So all controlled just with buttons, not with swipes and so on. So though it has a lot of smartphone features, it's much easier to control. So if you know somebody that might be struggling but needing some of those communication features, then this might be something worth considering. Right, so I'm very conscious that it's now 12 o'clock, and I think that I've covered a bit of what we do here. So I better hand back to Rebecca for any questions that anybody may have.
Thanks, Peter. That was great. A really good overview of the kind of things that are around. And yeah, no, a couple of people have had to go. So yes, we will be sending the recording to everyone, so they'll be able to view it back. So we have had one question with the two larger machines. They're asking where they can be purchased and what will be the approximate cost.
Yes.
So that was yeah.
So the larger machines, so the desktop here, the Clearview Speech, is just under $7,000. So it's probably our most expensive piece of equipment, but it's the most fully functional one. You can purchase that direct from us at Quantum. It's also available through Vision Australia and some of the other vision agencies like the See Differently in South Australia and so on. So if you want to see one and try one, the best way is to either come to our site support centre here in Brisbane, in Sydney, or in Melbourne, or arrange for a home visit, because we can actually bring equipment to people's homes for them to try out.
Mm-hmm.
The Cloverbook comes in two versions. So the one that I've demonstrated today is called the Cloverbook Pro, and that's just under $5,000 at $4,900. That includes the text-to-speech, the magnification, and the distance capability. But we also have one for, I think, about $3,250 called the Cloverbook Lite. And that doesn't have the speech, but it has the other features except for the distance camera. So that's those two mentioned there. And they then, of course, the smaller ones are much less expensive, down to I think about $350 for the Clover 3.
Yeah. So yeah, so that's that. I think somebody registered was asking about the computer thing, so you've covered that a little bit. Some of the software, like the Zoom text Peter mentioned, can be trialed. So yeah, we can talk to you directly about how to do that. There's a web link, and you can trial it 40 minutes at a time and see if it's something that would suit you, and we can help you with talking about the features. So yep. Has anybody else got any questions? I'll just check the chat again.
Beck, I might while you're checking that, I might just do a 30-second tour of the showroom. Just to show you that
certainly.
we also have some daily living aids that are quite popular with people. So we have a space here where we put some of the most popular daily living aids, like large print clocks, liquid level indicators so you know that your coffee's not overflowing, talking clocks and so on. Talking microwave. This is one that as you open the door and so on, it'll actually tell you that sorry, it's not plugged in, but it would actually say in a synthetic voice, door open. And as you go through the minutes and seconds, it will actually speak those as you operate these very straightforward controls. We have talking bathroom scales, talking kitchen scales. The idea of that is that you don't need to use your eyes to read the display. You can simply put the flour in. And so this text-to-speech of the thing. Kettles, talking radios, large print phones and so on. Now, these items are actually from Vision Australia. We have them here just as a convenience for people to try them out, handle them, and then they can purchase them from Vision Australia's online catalogue. And we can help people with that too, talking watches and various labelling systems as well. So we just felt that this would be a useful extra facility compared to all the electronic aids and optical magnifiers that I showed you earlier. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Peter. And I think in our Victorian office, they possibly have some of those devices now as well. In Sydney, we yet to do that, but we're hopefully getting a bit of a renovation. So maybe after that, we'll have them here. Okay, I will just share our contact information. So thank you again, Dilini, and thanks, Peter, for great presentations there. So if anybody is wanting more information on the things that Quantum can provide, we've got our general number 1300 883 853, which you'll reach our wonderful customer service team and they can put you in touch with the consultant for your area. Or we've got our website, Quantum quantumrlv.com.au, or you can send an email to info@quantumrlv.com.au. And for any allied health professionals out there or anyone wanting to, you can work with us, or you can refer your clients to us. And what we just have the assistive technology, so we don't have our own occupational therapists and things, so we can work with you and help clients and patients get the assistive technology information that they need. So thank you everybody again for attending, and we will see you next time.